In this episode of the podcast, we're going to break down and debunk 5 more pieces of cliche marriage advice because the last video was so popular, we're doing a follow-up. You know what? That's a lie. Let's be real. We're filming this back to back. We're just assuming that you guys are going to love this, but we want to keep it real.
Real like assless chaps. That's right.
How many times have you said assless chaps waiting to say that on the recording?
Very excited. I've said it many times already.
Let's get right into this. Welcome to 12-Week Relationships. This is your place for better relationships in weeks, not years. My name is Pye. I am a researcher and educator.
I'm Dr. Glen, psychologist and professor, and I love the chaps.
And he loves assless chaps.
There you go.
Yeah. Doctor of psychology, mind you, with 20 years of clinic. I feel like we have to pile on some of your credentials after your, affiliate, like this love that you have for assless chaps.
You're the one that left the visual of the last video.
I did.
So it's your fault, man.
And if you don't know what we're talking about, check out the last episode of 5 pieces of, cliche marriage advice.
There you go.
Let's get into 5 more. And we're going to start from the top. I'm going to say that, these are cliches, some good, some not so good. So we're going to kind of break down where the truths are and where the myths are that need to be debunked. Starting with number 1, you marry your parents.
This one has some truth to it.
A lot of truth.
A lot of truth. So we had our researcher, Stacy, and they were talking about marriages, and they found that 80% of marriages are based off of your attachment wounds.
Yeah.
So it does have to do with mommy and daddy a lot.
Yeah. And attachment wounds are basically these different attachment styles that we develop because of our relationship to our parents. It's that first relationship that we kind of experience in life. And these actually can begin, we're finding that they start at the time of pregnancy. Like they begin in the womb, right? And they continue through our childhood.
Yeah. And the premise is the first 3 years are the most important in terms of that attachment style.
So oftentimes we will end up marrying a person that kind of emulates the attachment style that we are familiar with our parents. So let's give an example. Let's say that growing up, your father was kind of the avoidant personality. He was a charismatic businessman that was usually away from the home. When he was there, you were always seeking his approval. You wanted to get his love and attention because when you did, it felt like he was this sun kind of shining this light on you. And so that became something you were always looking for. So you develop this kind of anxious attachment style where you're always seeking approval. You kind of get this people-pleasing nature. When you encounter somebody that is like your father, this charismatic kind of outgoing person who kind of feels like a catch, right? They kind of feel like you have to win them over. It has this strange sense of familiarity where you almost feel like it's destined, it's fate, it's euphoric.
Yeah, this person feels like the one.
And in reality, we're kind of replaying this childhood trauma.
Yeah, you're playing that wound because it's coming from a space of desperation. So, this person, they're not recognizing it, but unconsciously, they're like, I get to heal this part of myself through this person.
Yeah. So not only did our researcher come up with that 80% number, I've actually seen a number of recent TED Talks and articles from other research talking about just the likelihood that you are going to marry the wrong person. Like this is an actual thing, that you are more likely than not going to marry the wrong person. And much of it comes down to simply these attachment wounds.
Yeah, because they're unresolved. So it's an opportunity for you to work through them.
Yeah. So bottom line, there is a lot of truth to you marry your parents.
No, it's true. And then it could be the opposite too. So let's say in that example, since my daddy wasn't around, I'm going to pick a partner that stays at home all the time and does whatever the hell I say. Mm-hmm. It may look like they've healed the issue, but they're just playing it the other way. So now they're the kind of the distant parent or they're the distant partner and they're still playing out their wounds. So it could play in multiple forms.
Well, and very likely that would be based off of the other caretaker in the home, right? Maybe mom did stay home and did all that. So they end up marrying the person that was more like mom, or maybe the caretaker was grandma or a nanny or whatever it might have been. But you vacillate between those extremes.
You're internalizing it all.
Okay, so you marry your parents is actually quite accurate on a lot of levels. That's not so much a cliche or myth. Well, I mean, it is cliche, but it is.
But it has truth to it.
An accurate one. Let's go to number 2. Marriage, or at least a successful one, is all about communication. What do you think about that one?
It's horse shit, man.
I was wondering if you're making a fart sound or if you're making a horse sound. You were making a horse sound.
I was trying to make a horse sound.
It was good.
Thanks, man.
I think like
with the lips, right?
Yeah, that was great. That was great. This one is complete garbage on multiple levels. But there's actually a book, a really fascinating book called How to Fix Your Marriage Without Talking About It. And the whole book, the premise is that there's so many studies that show that communication is not the key to a successful relationship, that in many cases in an unhealthy environment, talking about the problem more actually makes it worse.
It makes it worse because you're just feeding the toxicity over and over and over again.
And yet you go to weddings, you go to any place. I mean, even professionals still haven't got the message from like the researchers that marriage is not all about communication. You constantly hear this. You hear it from friends. You hear it in wedding toasts. You hear it from other professionals, which is the most disturbing of all. We're not on the same page. We need to be. It's not all about communication.
No, I mean, it's not how you communicate, it's what you communicate about.
Yes.
And that's the distinction with our 12-week program is, though people will be like, well, we need better communication techniques. No, once they know their core values and what they're actually wanting in their relationship, now the conversation changes and they have the ability to actually share what it is that they want.
I have a really great analogy for this. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
I'm going to pull back a little photography experience into this conversation.
Pull it out.
Okay. There's this idea. A lot of people that don't know anything about photography think that good photography is about the camera, right? So they actually go and buy nicer and nicer cameras thinking that the camera is going to make their photography better. And what you end up getting is basically a higher quality piece of shit. Like it's the exact same thing if you were to go and say, you know what, I want to cook like Gordon Ramsay. So I'm going to go and buy the same cooking utensils and appliances that he uses. That is going to help you make better garbage, literally. Because
it'll look better.
It'll probably look better and you'll probably make it faster and you'll get there easier. But it's going to be garbage because what's missing is the ingredients, the knowledge of what he's doing. Same thing on the photography side, same thing on the communication side when it comes to a relationship. See, it's not giving you better tools. So that, I mean, better tools is great. Like being a good communicator is a great overall tool to have. But it's not the tool that's going to fix the problem. It's the actual underlying problem that needs to be addressed. Why are we having that argument in the first place? What is the root of this? Resolving that is the key. And really, good communication skills help to get there. Sure, they can make it easier. But if we just simply talk about the problem, we're actually never addressing the underlying root cause.
Yeah, so it's fair to say that good communication comes from the byproduct of what you're talking about. So when you get to the roots, you're naturally going to be a better communicator because you're connected with what it is that you actually want to say and do.
When you know how to do that.
Yeah.
And I would say like, I don't know, I almost feel like the knowledge of going to the problem and actually addressing the issue is the key piece of this. And that the communication aspect, it almost is like, it's just simply whether you're going to get there faster or slower. That's it. In the photography, it's how easy it is to create what you want to create, right? The better tool might make your life a little bit easier. In cooking, same thing. A better tool might make your life a little bit easier. And in relationships, better communication would make your life a little bit easier. But it does nothing to actually address the underlying issue. And that's where 90% of the effort needs to be focused on.
Yeah, so like another analogy is like the beer commercials. The beer doesn't bring the party. You actually need to have people and friends and relationships to have people that'll actually come over. And then the beer can kind of supplement that.
Judas Priest, bro. I have to remind people that you're the doctor of psychology.
I'm trying to follow your logic. Is that not a good example?
True.
Because in the commercials, if you have the beer, then people in the party will come to them.
As soon as you pop the can, it's
like a pool party and everyone's there. So same thing, right?
The weird thing too is like in some of these commercials, they pop the can and it starts snowing and everybody's in their bathing suits.
Yeah, they're in their bathing suits and a party happens, right?
But the
but you need friends.
Nobody wants to be in a. Yeah. You ever been in a bathing suit in the cold? It's cold as shit, man. I've done this before. It's called a freeze out. It's not fun.
But you're doing the whole like.
You know what? You got me derailed. Let's get to what are we at? Number 2. No, we were on number 2.
We are.
We have derailed. You know what? Along with your, beer party analogy and stuff. Actually, no, this is completely separate from the beer party analogy. Another way that we can say like marriage is not about communication is just to say simply like, you know what? Maybe we can bring it back to the beer. But you can't minus everything else out of the relationship, give it good communication, and then have a successful marriage. And my point being is like, you can't say that in this marriage, we don't have sex. There is, no common interests. We don't share similar values. We're on completely different pages. We don't, respect and have admiration, but both of us are really effective communicators. We know that that's not the key to a healthy relationship because that relationship would still be defunct. And I said I would bring it back to your beer analogy. So it's the party, but with just the beer?
Exactly.
I need your help.
Yeah. So using your so using your analogy, right? You have to focus on the root of the causes. Like, so the person that has a beer, if you're just drinking beer and you're by yourself, the beer's not going to do anything
That's
for
depressing.
you. Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, going back to the communication component, now I'm confused too, man. I'm just lost. I just need a beer now. I think my point was I think people assume that communication is just talking and then that's everything. But then if you're withdrawing or you're not saying anything, you're non-verbally communicating too. Mm-hmm. Right. So for example, going back to the beer guy and he pops the cap and then there's no party and there's no bikini and snow, he's going to be sad. He's got to realize I need to make friends and I need to be more social and put myself out there. And then I could have the party with the beer.
I feel you, bro. Case in point, make the party, then get the beer.
Yeah. And then let's say with the photographer too, like get better at your job and then buy the better equipment.
There you go.
Yes.
There you go. Anthony, you're going to have to piece that together in some way that makes sense. So that's on him. If you don't like that piece of the episode, blame our editor, Anthony.
Yeah, it's all Anthony's fault. I like where this is going.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 3, people don't change.
That's not true.
I mean, there is a truth to it, but then there's also a complete garbage component of it because people can and do change. They just don't change when you want them to.
Well, also, even if people technically, like, let's say emotionally, they don't change, they're physically changing. We're all getting older.
Oh, you're getting like all like
literally
metaphorical, philosophical.
Change is happening all the time. And then even when people are like, oh, this person is the same, even if they try to live a similar lifestyle, they can't. Like, they're forced to change.
Yeah. People are constantly changing. I mean, change is like the only universal law, right? That we know. The reason why people say that people don't change is because usually people don't change based on what we might want them to do. Like, I want them to do this, or I want them to be this kind of person, and they're not willing to do that. And so we say people don't change. And that's true. Nobody's going to change for you, but they will change when they want to change, when they feel like they're at a place where, whatever it might be, when there's that common saying, which I think is pretty accurate, of like, people change when the pain of staying is greater than the pain of changing, right? That's very accurate. People change when they want to, when the pain of staying the same is too much. They just don't do it on your timetable, and they might not change to be the thing that you want them to be. That's the part of it that, like, is both kind of true and untrue.
So this should be rephrased that people don't change for you.
Correct. People don't change for you, or people change when they want to change.
Yeah. But on the flip side, like, you see people that try not to change and then life is just passing them by and eventually they're forced to change, like you were saying, because they're just kind of rotting, trying not to change.
Yeah. The other side of this, what this really implies when you say something like people don't change, there's several things that it implies. First, like, well, some people would say, like, this is a weird piece of this, is on this side, we use it negatively to say people never change, right? But then on the other side, we also use it negatively to blame somebody for why a relationship ended. Oh, you've changed. Which is kind of stupid and ironic, because on one side, we're sitting here saying that they don't change. And on the other side, we're sitting here blaming the end of the relationship based on the fact that they did change. Mm-hmm. The reality is that people can and they should change on their own timetable. That is literally, though, the piece of life that makes things interesting. Not only is this a universal law, but when it comes to the context of our relationships, Change and growth is not only a part of our framework and process, it's the piece that makes a relationship exciting. It's the thing that gives you something to continually explore. If I'm changing and I'm growing as my friend, there's always something new to talk about, right? Each time we catch up, there's something different to chat about. The problem is when we're not changing and growing together, when we're going in different directions. That's the real issue.
So I think, excuse me, for a couple of things. I think number one, people don't change for you. And then people's circumstances may not change, but they still are changing.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
People do change. They don't change for you. They change when they want to change. And overall change and growth is a positive and necessary thing.
And even if their circumstances aren't changing, they're still changing. And the way that I would say it is, you know, the analogy of like a chick, like when it's born in that egg. So oftentimes, like they've done studies where the chick will try to stay in the egg. And if it stays in the egg, then it's staying in its own feces and toxicity. But eventually it has to like peck itself out and go to the next stage, right? So some people are in that toxic stage where they're just trying to stay in that space, but they're still changing. They're moving in the direction of change, even if they're being forced to. And then they're eventually forced to change. Yeah.
Which brings up a great point. In the context of marriage, there's a couple options. Like if you were to think of the chick option, the option would be to like break out of the marriage, right? To like leave. If this person's not changing, if this is just staying the way it is to leave. But that's not necessarily the one that well, at least that I would personally suggest that you default to. For me, from our clinical work, the default in these scenarios, when the other person is not willing to change, it's for you to stop worrying about them and to focus on your change and your growth and your development. And oftentimes what happens is that they just learn by proxy. They learn from your example. Rather than you fixating and focusing on what they're doing, focus on yourself. Focus on changing and you being the better one, you being the example, not because you want to manipulate or change them, but because you genuinely want to be a better version of yourself. And you can single-handedly change a relationship by simply refocusing your energy inwards. This happens all the time.
No, I agree. But so going back to the chick analogy, that's what I'm trying to say is that everyone's changing. Like even if you're stewing in your own shit, you're on a slower path of change, but you're still in the process of change.
Totally.
Everything is always changing no matter what.
Totally. Then there are those cases though where a relationship might be so defunct and nothing's happening, nothing's changing. You are focused inward and it's been years and you know, in those cases it becomes time to like break out and
to move forward. I agree.
Okay. Let's go to number 4. Never fight in front of the children. Who comes up with this crap?
I mean, once again, I don't think you should be like fighting violently ever, or your kids are experiencing that, right? But if you're fighting in a healthy manner, it's good for them to see what that looks like, how you resolve problems, how you engage in conflict, and doing it in a healthy way. If you're doing that, then it's fine to actually do that in front of the children.
Yeah, this is kind of ridiculous. Again, along the lines of like never go to bed angry. If we expect our relationships to last a lifetime, what is the likelihood that we are never going to go to bed angry? Slim to zero. If we expect our relationships to last a lifetime, what is the likelihood that we can never fight in front of our children? Slim to zero. Like you said, there are healthy ways of arguing and addressing issues. There are unhealthy ways. And we all know the unhealthy ways. Obviously those don't need to be done whether they're in front of the kids or not, right? Those just are unhealthy, period. But we have 4 kids. Sometimes our kids see us argue. It is a positive thing because sometimes they go, Mom and Dad, I wish you would stop fighting. And that's a moment for us to clarify and say, you know, we're not actually fighting right now. We're having a discussion. Maybe there are emotions involved. Maybe we're talking about these things, but this is the way that you resolve problems. And the kids go, oh, okay, so that's actually normal. Yes, holy shit. Yes, conflict is a normal and necessary part of every relationship. The closer you want a relationship to be, the more you need to be willing to actually address conflict and to be able to work through it. It doesn't have to be in an unhealthy manner, but the only relationships that avoid conflict are the ones that are either too new to address it or they're too fragile. Like, oh, if we talk about something, the relationship's just going to be over. So I think this is complete garbage in the sense of like, is it our goal to fight in front of the children? No. But sometimes they're going to see us argue. Sometimes they're going to see us have a discussion. And those are opportunities to teach them healthy conflict.
But even, okay, let's say that people try to follow this. And there's actually like a family, I did when I was doing family therapy. It's true. The kids, like they never fought in front of the kids and they would take it outside. But during the sessions, the kids are like, but we knew you guys were fighting. We never
makes it so
saw
much
it,
worse.
but you could feel the tension in the air.
For sure.
You can feel the awkwardness that was taking place. So even though they didn't technically see the fight, they were experiencing the ripple and the energy in that house. And it still didn't hide it from them. Like they still had issues that they needed to work through. It didn't take away any consequences of not seeing it.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Kids are smart. They're going to know.
They can sense everything.
They can sense it. And if you're not teaching them how to have healthy conflict, then what's the flip side? What are they learning then?
To avoid and just pretend that everything is okay, which is even worse.
To avoid it, or even to think that conflict in and of itself is unhealthy. Even the healthy version of conflict, that is unhealthy. And they're never going to have close relationships with people because as soon as they encounter conflict, they're going to think, you know what, this isn't good. I need to step away from this.
I need to pull away from this. So they're already becoming this kind of avoidant, distant individual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, number 5, say sorry, even if you don't mean it. I've heard this one in so many different formats, but the idea here is that no matter what, she's always right. No matter what, you always say sorry, even if, you didn't do anything wrong. And even if you don't mean it. And this one is such a strange one because on one side of it, I do see like when there's an issue between my wife and I often do say sorry first, but it's not because I don't mean it. It's because I just didn't want to hurt her. So I am sorry for hurting her. I am sorry for doing whatever it was that did that. But that's kind of like the opening to get the conversation started, right? I don't see an issue with that. And I think that is a very healthy thing to kind of like put ego aside and just, understand what the other person is feeling in that moment. But the idea of just saying sorry to get something over with, that doesn't sit well with me.
Yes. I mean, I think you lay a really good distinction. Like, for example, in that example with you and your spouse, if you automatically just apologize, where she's like, you did this to me and this is wrong, and you didn't mean it, that's insincere. And that's just going to breed more resentment toward, like, you're going to probably have a lot of resentment toward her then, because it's just going to fester and build versus what you did, which is, I'm sorry for hurting you, but help me understand. That's a different take because you're being sorry for what it is that you feel that you need to take responsibility for.
Yeah. And again, this piece of advice is oversimplified, right? Because when we're talking about a healthy dynamic, then you typically, one person might open with, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do this or make you feel this way. Can you please tell me? And you open a dialogue, and in that dialogue, the other person says, I'm sorry too, I overreacted, whatever it might be, right? That's a healthy dialogue. But in an unhealthy relationship, or with one person that is potentially manipulative, or with two avoidant people, whatever it might be, I'm sorry is a tool to manipulate. I'm sorry is, see, that is why you did that thing. And I knew it. I knew you did that to hurt me. It doesn't work in that dynamic. So to say sorry, even if you don't mean it, this is, again, very oversimplified, and it doesn't apply to every single relationship scenario.
Yeah. And if you do that, you're going to make yourself anxious. You're going to suffer severe anxiety attacks, and you're going to feel guilty all the time.
Yeah.
You're always going to feel like everything that you're doing is wrong, even though you think that this is really good advice. You're just setting yourself up to always feel guilty.
Yeah. So if I were to modify this piece, it would be like, say sorry genuinely out of care for your partner's emotion, for wherever they're at in that place, and then seek to understand what happened in a healthy dynamic, right? That doesn't really come off the tongue nicely, like just always say sorry. But
yeah, and it's got to be sincere, because it could be really condescending too, or like, I'm sorry you feel that way.
Yeah, that's not good either.
That's just a condescending, like, F you. I'm not even really apologizing.
I hate that too. Those are the worst. They're not
I'm sorry that you feel that way.
I'm sorry you were hurt by what I said.
Yeah.
But it's true.
I'm sorry that you feel that way. And ultimately, I'm sorry that I'm not sorry.
Those are...
Yeah.
Those forms of apologies, I personally feel like when someone says sorry to me without meaning it, whether it's worded in that way or whether I just feel like the apology is insincere, in that moment, they have done more damage to the relationship than not saying anything. If you apologize to me insincerely, or if you say to me something like, I'm sorry that what I said hurt your feelings, but you have to know the reality. If they say anything like that, it's further damaging my regard for that individual and my likelihood that I want this relationship to continue.
Well, it's just a condescending tone. And that ultimately, if someone were to say that to me, that means that you're looking down on me.
For sure.
Don't want that relationship.
For sure.
Yeah. You can take your assless chaps and stick it up your ass. Like, you need to get the hell out.
Assless chaps, stick them up.
Oh, I was going to say, like, I was going to add the middle finger, but I forgot to add that. So,
okay. This is coming from the doc. All right.
Sorry, man.
All right. We got to be more professional, dude. There was someone that said on the podcast, they're like, I love it when people call themselves experts. What do you want us to do, man? It's a YouTube title. We got 2 words.
Oh, we're going back to that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of like, because you keep talking about the ass of chaps, and then I'm going to like, well, maybe we should be more professional. I'm like, you know what? Screw that. We are who we are.
We are who we are.
We are who we are. This is how we bring it.
We're just trying to keep it real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Okay. Where's it go with this?
Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. So check this out. All the stuff, if you guys have heard all of our other podcasts, you guys hear us talking a lot about core values. We've gotten quite a few questions, DMs about like, what are my core values? We actually prepped a guide for you all. So you guys can find the guide in the link to the podcast. So if you're actually watching on YouTube, it'll be in the description of the video. If you're listening, probably the best place to go to is just at 12 Week Relationships on Instagram. And from that link in our bio, you will see the free relationship guide, The Secret to Healthy Relationships, which is a core value workbook and guide. It's absolutely awesome. We spent a lot of time on this. This all comes from our research and our clinical work. And so not only is it cool, you can write us in and tell us what you think about it. And that'll also put you on the newsletter. We can send you all tips and insights each week. Just give you awesome stuff. No spam, no nothing. Mm-hmm. You want to talk about reviewing? They can also review us on iTunes.
They can also review us on iTunes. A 5-star review would be nice.
Wow. You're just going to like say, like just put it, you know what? Just go on to iTunes 5 stars. You're just going to
said it would be nice, but then you have the freedom to do whatever it is that you want to do. Like you could be as honest as you want. Like, but we would appreciate if it would be a 5-star review.
I'm just messing.
But if you're not, and then you're not sorry about it, that's okay.
When it's really early and I tease Glenn, he gets into like his like Asian. I'm so sorry.
You know what? Because it's the Asian guilt. See, I'm working on that.
Yeah.
I have a lot of Asian guilt, man.
Well, if you're like us and you have Asian guilt, stay tuned for more. See you guys.
Bye.